This is your reminder that the BBC has yet to address the consistent transphobic leanings in its news coverage, and while the team behind Doctor Who is not connected to this in any way since this is a BBC-owned property, I'm going to keep pointing it out until the problem gets resolved. Links in a pinned comment below if you don't know what I'm talking about. I'll stop saying it when it stops being a problem. So if you were expecting me to come up with an accurate cosplay for every single episode for the 15th Doctor, you can guess again. I love that he's got multiple outfits and a variable look. This is all you're getting from me. Also, his sonic screwdriver is not something I've been able to get a hold of yet. When I do, obviously you'll know. Maybe let's talk about the actual show now. Well, I say let's talk about the actual show, but let's not quite yet. Couple of notes. First is that you will only be getting one review today. I know that a number of people have opted to review these as a bundle, talk about them together. I'm not doing that. I hate that Disney released 2 episodes at once. I do, and it's not just specific to Doctor Who. I don't like when they do that anyways. But I've always talked about Doctor Who episodes as individual things as I review them, and I'm not going to stop doing it now. So you'll have this review today and the review for Devil's Cord tomorrow. That having been said, at time of recording, yes, I have seen both. Now, I am going to not be drawing connections between them. I might mention 1 or 2 things very casually, but for the most part, things that are more relevant to stuff I'm going to talk about in the Devil's Cord review, I might hold on those. I want this to be about this episode. Space Babies! What a title. So let's start at the top. Ncuti Gatwa is so good as the Doctor. I absolutely adore his energy, and he's also able to, bring it down and be very in the moment. I think one of the things I was a little worried of sort of in the back of my head was, is he having so much fun and being like so light and enjoyable that I'm not going to take it seriously when he deals with something that like actually worries him? Is he not going to be able to sell that? No, that worry's gone. He can absolutely sell that. So he's firing on absolutely all cylinders. I love his line delivery. I love the way he's being written. I like him a lot. As for Ruby Sunday, I also like her a lot. I will grant that she is in some ways, I don't want to say derivative, though if other people will say that, I would get why. She is, let's go with, cut from a similar cloth to characters like Rose Tyler and Amy Pond. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. And the main reason I don't think that's a bad thing, and under other circumstances, I might call out, we've kind of seen a companion like this before, because in a lot of ways we have, between her age, her general energy, like we have seen companions like this before in the modern era. I don't think that's a problem though, so long as she is playing off of this Doctor especially well. I don't really care if the companion is similar to a companion we've had before, so long as whoever she is, in this case, future companions, maybe not, but it tends to be the case. Whoever the companion is, that they are playing well off of this Doctor specifically, that their energies are complementary. That's what matters to me. And this kind of character plays very well off of this Doctor. So that to me is the most important thing. And I know, I say that as someone who complains that they keep going to the same template for companions over and over and over again. Young, conventionally attractive, from modern day England. Again and again and again. And I am tired of that. But I can't fix the fact that they keep doing that. I'd like them to stop, but if they're going to keep doing that, the very least they could do is give me 2 characters who just work well together. They have complementary dynamics, and when put in the same space, they bounce off each other and have terrific joint energy as a duo. And these 2 have that. That, to me, was the single most important thing for this episode to nail. So, having said that, you're going to hear me complain. a bit. The first thing I want to say is, like, this is not a bad episode. And actually going back and thinking on it and comparing it to other first series episodes for Russell T Davies when he was running the show initially, this is actually very much in keeping with a lot of his first episodes. Can I be blunt about this fact? I don't think Russell T Davies did exceptionally good first episodes for seasons of Doctor Who. I think the only one he really nailed during his run was Smith and Jones, the first episode of Series 3. That's a really good and underappreciated episode, and definitely for a starter, that one's great. The rest of them, like, Rose is okay, but it leans into a lot of very over-the-top and camp aspects that I don't always like when Doctor Who does, and in that one in particular with things like pizza and the burping trash can, like... And then New Earth is just forgettable as heck. Can we be honest about that? And as much as I love the 10th Doctor and Donna, I like Partners in Crime is light, it's fine, it's fun, but it's nothing to write home about. So I don't think RTD has a great track record with opening episodes, and this is kind of in line with most of his work with opening episodes. If you want to know what a really great Doctor Who opening episode is, Stephen Moffat had a number of really good ones. The 11th Hour, I think, is peak opening episode for a Doctor Who season, but I also think the pilot is really, really good. And even some of the other ones he had, I think are still solid. I would take over RTDs, but those are the two that I would highlight as being like, these are really good as openers. Whereas this, like, again, it's doing the job it needs to do, but also part of it is a bit like the episode Rose. It is leaning into elements of Doctor Who that I'm not an exceptionally large fan of, which is I have no problem with Doctor Who being light. I have no problem with Doctor Who being humorous, but that's getting ahead of things. Let's talk plot a little bit. Let's go through some plot beats. Opening this whole thing, we have Ruby asking him about his home, and I actually love the way Gatwa talks about this. How emphatically he is on the point of gone, and how he just kind of puts his foot down on the matter, not in a don't dare ever ask way, but honestly in a way that felt very honest about trauma and about someone who is at a point, like this was half the point of the bi-generation, was that the 14th Doctor was going to go off and basically get therapy for however long that took, that this Doctor could be in a better place and be less bogged down by his past. But that doesn't mean that past is gone. That trauma's not gone. So the way he responds to that so emphatically, to me, it rings very true to be a kind of reaction from somebody who's like, I will be very clear for you. This is something that, here's what it is, and I don't really want to dwell on it, and I will explain to the degree that I'm comfortable doing why, but can we move on, please? And like that, to me, feels honest for a reaction from somebody who is trying to move past and not have their life ruined by their trauma, but that doesn't mean the trauma is gone. It doesn't mean the loss is gone. It doesn't mean you don't remember the pain. You're just trying not to let it rule your life. And so this is kind of, in a way, throwing up that sign of like, yeah, please don't talk about that again, in a way that, again, doesn't feel like him shutting her off. It feels like him opening up enough for her to get that this is an issue that he doesn't want to deal with, and then to move forward from there, as opposed to the other end of the coin being someone like the 10th Doctor just refusing to talk about it at all with Martha Jones until she really pressed and prodded. So I liked that. Still don't like it. Extending it to longer does not make me like the joke that in the trailer I already didn't like. Humor is incredibly subjective, so other people might have found it funny. Other people might have laughed. I'm not going to get bogged down on it, though, because following the joke, this did something that I love when Doctor Who or any sci-fi kind of show at all can do, and do it well, which is just have a quick little throwaway line almost that covers something that just happened. Basically retroactively implying that it's not that the butterfly effect isn't a thing in the Doctor Who universe, it's that the TARDIS automatically sort of compensates and prevents that from happening, from such a tiny change resulting in such a massive sort of domino effect way down the line, and that it's always been in place, except he didn't have it on this time. I actually, like, That's the kind of thing I just like. I think that is a quick, snappy explanation that covers your bases, allows for the joke, and even though I still don't like the joke now has no lasting repercussions, nor does it rewrite the way that time travel and cause and effect works in Doctor Who, which admittedly has always been pretty loose and a little bit contradictory. But doing something as definitive as the butterfly effect, I think would have been a bad idea. But I'm more okay with it if they do it and then immediately go like, yeah, TARDIS normally means that doesn't happen. Kind of like how TARDIS just translates words for us. Speaking of which, I'll pause and mention this. It really felt like they were speed running the information.
My world is called Gallifrey, so we've moved location as well. I am the last of the Time Lords.
This is very clearly being designed as something both for the existing fan base, but also for people who are new to the show, which makes sense. This has got Disney money behind it now and a big international push. They're trying to make the show bigger than it ever was before, and that does mean bringing in a new audience. So there's a lot of stuff dropped real quick in pretty rapid succession in terms of just like getting all the lore out of the way. I come from Gallifrey. My planet's gone. I'm the last of the Time Lords. This is the TARDIS. We'll do a joke about butterfly effect, but overall, don't worry about that. That's not how time travel works here. And all these various things just get laid out very quickly in a way that I think is a little clunky, but I also get. I think pacing them out a bit more in the manner that you might do if this was coming off the back of a longer hiatus, like the episode Rose was back in 2005. If you were coming off the back of like a really long pause or starting something for the first time, you'd want to pace this information out a bit more. However, this is ultimately, it seems to me to be a situation where, look, we need to get this information established for all the new people, but we also don't want to pace it the way that we would if this entire thing was brand new, because that's just going to make the existing fans feel condescended to and a bit bored, just sort of going like, yeah, we know. So let's just get it out of the way. Let's just get out of the way real quick. And while I think it is a little bit clunky, it does get the job done. There is, however, one specific thing that I think is legitimately and incorrectly rushed. But that happens later. So stick a pin in that. I'll come back to it. So then we have the trip into space and some very cool visuals. These days, I try pretty hard not to harp on Doctor Who's effects. I've been trying to do that a lot less, both in my reviews of the modern episodes and when I talk about classic over my secondary channel. Random plug for that. Breakroom of Geeks. But the thing is, I will still call out stuff that I'm like, you should have known better than to try that, or I don't think that was ever going to work. What I'm trying to not call Doctor Who out for too often is like, okay, that could have worked, but you couldn't afford it, or you didn't have the time, or you didn't have the budget, whatever. You didn't have the resources. I'm less inclined to call that out these days, unless it's something where I feel myself going like, you should have known at the writing stage you couldn't afford to pull that off. Unless it hits that level, I'll usually let it slide. This, unfortunately, at least for me, at the best of times, is always going to be unsettling and uncanny, even if the effect is seamless. And the effect is not seamless in this. So that doesn't help, but I honestly think it was a bad idea from the get-go. I don't think the babies in and of themselves were a bad idea, and I actually kind of like that they have a certain degree of intelligence that they've developed, and they can kind of do a certain amount of stuff for themselves, but like they're sort of physically restricted, and like honestly, just because of how unsettling I find the effect, and I'll explain why in a second, and I'm not just going to leave it at that, but like, I don't know, I almost would have preferred a cheaper solution, like just put a little band around their heads and be like, oh, this will speak the thoughts that they want to be heard out loud, or just something to not do the mouth. Now, like, I'm more inclined to have a problem with this mouth thing than most, because I've noted this when I've talked about completely CGI characters before. A lot of people talk about dead eyes on CGI creations. I almost never do, because I'm not always instinctively drawn to eyes. I'm actually drawn to mouths. My eyes tend to settle on mouths and lips. And so I notice when that stuff's off. And for the record, there are plenty of completely CGI creations with flawless eyes and the mouths just don't move correctly at all. And like, I'm the only one who notices. So I understand this is partially a me problem. But the thing is that because my eyes are drawn directly to where the effect is, I'm noticing all the stuff that doesn't work. But the core of it is that no matter what the performer, the voice actor is doing, and no matter what expression they give the mouth, there is a disconnect between that and the rest of the face. Sometimes they link up well enough that you get away with it. I think Captain Poppy probably has the best stuff where that kid's pretty bright expression fit mostly lines delivered in that vein. But then you got some of the stuff with Eric. That kid has a look that's very like, I'm confused and I don't know what's going on, which like I'm sure that kid was confused and didn't know what was going on. But then you've got lines like, I love you, Ruby, and there's just this inherent disconnect between the eyes and the mouth that I did find distracting throughout the entire thing. Does it ruin the episode? No. We get the introduction of Nanny, aka Jocelyn. I actually really like her as a character. Like the overall concept of Nanny, when you thought it was an artificial intelligence, I was like, oh, okay, well, I guess that covers the basis for how these kids have been able to be okay, even as they are, advanced by toddler, infant, whatever age, whatever they should be called, standards. My conscience wouldn't let me leave them, but also the fact that she is not someone who is in a position to be able to help. Like, she's doing her best because she thinks it's what she needs to do, but she's trying to fix things by just hitting them with a wrench. She's not an engineer. So she's somebody who absolutely wants to help, but she's also deeply out of her depth. In terms of the qualifications of who needed to be the one to stay behind, she doesn't have them. And I like that. It adds to that sort of desperation you give to her. And I also actually really like how simple, but how just hit me in the heart, her explanation for why she let the kids think she was just an AI. Ah, ha, ha, ha. Oh, that hit hard and in a good way. So that worked really well. This is also where we get a lot of the explanations for like how we got into the situation. And there are some political points made that I'm a little bit torn on. First of all, let me be very blatant about this. I agree with the political points made. I agree wholeheartedly. How am I going to word this? So there's basically two political points made. One which I think was done about as well as I would want it done in something like this. And the other, I think, was hit a little harder than it should have been. So the one that was hit a little too hard is the reproductive rights. I definitely don't have a problem that analogy was there. I actually kind of put those pieces together as soon as Jocelyn said, there is a law that we can't turn off the baby making machine. And so I immediately thought, hang on. I actually paused the episode and like talked it through. Hang on. You can't stop the baby machine. But the law only says you can't turn off the baby machine, but there's no requirement whatsoever to actually care for and help these kids once they're born. Holy crap. That is so pointed with everything going on right now with the reproductive rights. As more and more rights get restricted or taken away, more and more people are finding themselves in a situation where they are not allowed to not have a baby. But then as soon as the baby's done, there's no social network. All that stuff's either been dismantled or was never implemented in the first place. You must have a kid, but we will not help you. Like that feels really pointed. I don't think making that connection is a bad thing for this episode to do. You know what threw me off, though, was Ruby's line following up. There is a secondary interpretation of this, and I'll get to that in a second, but like in the moment, that read to me very much as a deliberate connection to making it Earth. So like it's not just allegorical. She's just going, yeah, it's like that back where I come from too. And I think that's hitting the political point a little too hard, and I'll explain why. Not in the abstract. I don't have a problem with Doctor Who or anything making political points. I don't even have a problem with making those points with the subtlety of a sledgehammer. Honestly, sometimes that's appropriate. However, why it struck me as off here is because this isn't going to come back. This political point, while valid, isn't actually going to be the main thrust of the episode. And it never really circles back onto this issue. So in my mind, if you're going to hit it this hard, it should come back up again and be a little bit more core to the overall story you're telling. And if it's not going to be, maybe you didn't need that final button on it. Because that's like drawing excessive attention to something that isn't the point. It's like, I don't know, a camera roving around a room at all these props or whatever, and, you know, potential Chekhov's gun situations, and just lingering on a prop for longer than any of the others, but that prop will never come up again. Like, it's not even enough to be a red herring. It's just like, why'd you linger on that? That wasn't, you could have just kept going. Now, I said there is a secondary interpretation to what Ruby says, and it is possible that when she said that line about, not that hard to believe, she was referring more to her own abandonment as a child, which is a notion that is going to come up later, even within this episode. It is distinctly possible that that was what was meant by her line. I think, unfortunately, putting that line immediately after the political point was made and piggybacking it directly off that muddies the waters, and just, I think her bringing in that connection, she either should have said much more blatantly about being left behind, or she should have brought that up maybe a bit later. Because the place at which it happens and the way that it's worded, to me, felt more like hammering the political point too hard. And even if that's not what was meant, I think it being interpretable that way is to the show's detriment, and would have been better to move her sentiment or to have it be clearer what she meant by that. Now, I did say there was another political point that does handle things, I think, at about the right level. So I'll use this as a point of comparison, which is the refugee stuff. Because, they have the issue of this station is stationary. It's not meant to move. So they can't get it to where they can get help. And even if they get a signal out, no one's going to come and get them. That applies to refugees all the way down the line, whether it's someone fleeing a country because it's in a complete economic downturn, or if it's someone desperately trying to flee or just find a safe place when they're in their own country because other people won't stop bombing it, and they even bomb the places that everyone has fled to try and be safe, and everybody just stands around and watches. Yeah. Anyway, that political point, I think, was made at the right level. It was brought up that point was made, but it wasn't lingered on, which, again, I don't have a problem with it being lingered on if that's the point of the episode. Like, you can look at something like the 12th Doctor's episode Oxygen, which is an episode I love. That makes its political points really directly about capitalism.
The end point of capitalism. Bottom line, where human life has no value at all.
But it's because that's the point of the whole episode. So being that blunt, I think, is very warranted. When it's not that core, I don't think it necessarily helps to be overly blunt. Oh, and anyone who tells you Doctor Who didn't use to make his political points this bluntly, or crowbar them in this much, or like be this unsubtle about them, anyone claiming that is either deeply disingenuous or has forgotten what Doctor Who has been since almost the beginning. While this is by no means the start of Doctor Who having blatant political messaging, these people clearly have not watched the third Doctor, John Pertwee's era, because holy crap, was there a lot of very blatant political messaging there made with the subtlety of a brick. So, yeah. I just need to get that stuff off my chest, because I still see these people in my comments. It's like, what are you even doing here? Look at me. You don't want to hear my opinion. I don't want to hear yours. Anyways, moving on. Not exactly why it happened, but what the Bogeyman is, I called pretty early, because there's a line not too far in after they've run away from this thing, and I think it's the first time they're looking at it over the security cameras. And he makes a comment like, what is its skin made out of? And then my brain sort of went down a rabbit hole trying to figure out, well, what could it be made of that he wasn't expecting? Like, what could that be? Oh, no. So I actually called that probably earlier than I was meant to. As far as this reveal goes, I'm actually way more okay with it than I would think that I would be. Because, like, for instance, I hate the sleep dust monsters in Sleep No More. There's a lot I don't like about Sleep No More, but the very concept and the way those monsters are explained, I don't like it. I don't like it one bit. This I'm kind of okay with, largely because of the extra layers of explanation that we get. This whole idea that the storytelling AI went walkers and tried to build a story for the babies to exist in. And if there's going to be a story, there's got to be a monster. What's the perfect monster? It's the Bogeyman, and it's an AI, and it did that super, super literally. That actually, again, a bit like the butterfly effect line that covered for that joke, that's an explanation that I think covers for an absurd concept. That covers it well enough for me. You know, sort of a close enough for government work. That's good enough for my purposes. That satisfies my brain. I'm good with that. This is the moment that made me fall in love with Ruby, because it was a specific moment. Because they're going down to try and get Eric, and she asked the doctor, "Hey, will the Bogeyman follow us if we make a lot of noise?" Oh, I love that so much. I love everything about that. I love what she did. I love the look on her face. I love the delivery of the line. It's like she's taunting the warriors. Oh, it's so good. So it's usually I can pinpoint for you a moment where I fall in love with a doctor. That's a moment I fell in love with a companion. I don't usually have precise moments for companions for that. That one, though, bravo, love it. No notes for that. I also actually really like the doctor being very, very pointed and even kind of desperate about it's doing what it was made to do. It is the only one of its kind. And Jocelyn, I think, very understandably, why the doctor won't let that happen. And I think this is kind of what I meant when I said Gatwa is selling the heavier moments and the desperation, because just looking through that porthole at this thing getting pulled apart as the oxygen field is fading, that he sells that with no lines. That's really good. And that was the part I kind of wanted to be convinced he could do, and he shows it to me here. And I like that notion in general. I think it maybe wasn't necessary for him to for them to layer in the stuff he said earlier in the same episode about, you know, how I'm the only one of my kind, unique in the universe, and so is everyone else. Like, it all fits. It makes the point. I think these episodes are short enough. You didn't necessarily have to do that. Like, if this scene was happening next episode and you wanted to call back stuff said the previous episode, yeah, sure, go ahead. But I don't know. Then again, I also sort of made the connection of what he was doing and why immediately. And it is possible some audiences might have been confused or not entirely sure why he flipped that switch and was trying to save the Bogeyman. So maybe it was worth making the point. It wasn't distracting. I question whether it was needed. I don't know. It wasn't too bad. And so the babies are saved, and we get a fart joke. Yay. Then we get to the thing that I alluded to before, the one thing that I think is absolutely rushed. I'm not sure if that would have felt rushed to me if there wasn't all the other stuff piled on that they were rushing through. The explanation of the TARDIS, of the Doctor, of the fact that he's just called the Doctor, where he comes from, that the place he comes from is gone, Maybe if there wasn't all that other stuff crammed in, maybe this wouldn't feel so rushed in addition. But like, to me, this is in effect her first real adventure with the Doctor, because the first thing that happened, Church on Ruby Road, that is the person who he ran into while doing something. Like, that does not necessarily make someone a companion. Traveling in the TARDIS makes you a companion. So for all intents and purposes, this is his first outing with her. And he just hands her the key right away. And I guess I felt like that deserved a little bit more ceremony. Like, maybe something that felt like it bonded them together more than this particular adventure felt like it did. Or maybe just giving it a little more of the weight of time passing. I don't know. That felt in particular rushed in, like that shouldn't be in this episode. That should be in a later episode kind of way. I do really like his explanation, and also, again, covering bases, although this is more integrated into what feels like genuine character moments and less like lore exposition, which is him explaining he can't take her to see her mom. And I like that that's covered really early on, because that's something that viewers, especially new ones, are going to be asking. Why can't he do that? Well, if you've been watching for a while and you've seen episodes like Father's Day, you know why. But I also like that he says both.
I can. And I won't.
Making it really clear this is not a logistical hurdle. This is not a I believe I can't, but maybe him like, no, I will not do that. And again, just in a very few words, his delivery, making the point really well. I think that was well handled. And so overall, as this thing wraps up, I'm just left feeling, okay, that was good. It wasn't great, wasn't phenomenal. It was about on par with, I'd say, the slightly upper end of Russell T Davies' first episodes. I think, because like I'm trying to think, so he's done 5 opening episodes for seasons. Smith and Jones is the best, just is. I might give the next one to Partners in Crime, and then this one behind it, but those are like almost basically tied, and then Rose, and then New Earth way down at the bottom. So this is kind of average for as far as opening episodes for seasons, as far as he goes. We have a moment with the snow happening, which this is one of the few times I will acknowledge knowledge of a later episode is very clearly going to be a recurring motif thing. Over lean on like the mystery of Ruby Rose, because that just gives me Clara flashbacks and I don't want it. But thankfully it didn't really come up at all in the following episode. So if they're doing it, it's something that's cooking in the background as opposed to bogging down episode by episode. So that's good at least. I'll take that. So yeah, this is the kind of start that does nothing to make me think, oh, this season's going to be great or that this season's going to be bad. This is the kind of start that makes me go, okay, cool. Let's see what you do next. Like that is the epitome of what this is. It's not amazing, but it's not bad. I have nitpicks. I have praises. I mean, it's if you're new to this channel by chance, it's pretty rare for me to have a uniformly across the board, everything is great or everything is crap. I try and find the good even in episodes I don't like, and I am, as much as I would very much prefer not to be, inclined to find things to critique even in stuff that I love. So, but this is a pretty, I think, healthy balance. The stuff that is good is not bogged down by the stuff that I didn't think worked as well. So it's not even a case of the stuff that I don't like is ruining the stuff that I do. It's just like, some good stuff, some not so good stuff. It's a mix, but it was fun. And again, to bring it back to the beginning, the core thing this needed to do, which is to really establish me what their dynamic is now that they are starting to know each other and have a sense of each other and traveling together. It sells me that dynamic. It sells me each of them as a character. It's good. They are good. I'm having a lot of fun with the two of them, and that is what this had to do more than anything else. And it did it. So, tomorrow, I will have a review out for The Devil's Cord. And I am not going to be teasing my opinion at this time. Tune in tomorrow for that. But for right now, space babies! What'd you think about it? Whatever your thoughts are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Patreon pays the bills, enables me to do this as my living. But even if you cannot help me out that way, like, share, subscribe are also helpful. Links to other stuff I do down in the description. Don't worry too much about it, though. What I really want you to remember is that you are beautiful, you are valid, and you are loved. You are the council, and I am just running the meetings. And until next time, this council is adjourned. Now to give my thanks to my highest supporting patrons: Robin Moore, Zubin Lutfula, Goddess Elida, Oliver B., Tarak, the thing that goes doink in the anime, Jean Foray, Ulrich Bogdan, Loki Eris, Melinda Walters, Jen, Auntie Kate 808, Becky Sparks, Bernabe Likes the Poodle, Tracy Scrappett, Angry Casperl, Dave Hall, White Bearish, Rosalind Bennett, Toka Blahuvian, Pau Barabajoggle, and Mara G. Thank you so much for your support. You can get your name said, maybe even correctly, in the Patreon support tiers. Also, it helps me feed these little buggers.